Bonsoir les amis, this is Llyane, and tonight we will dive into questions that came to me this week, actually today. And I'm always answering questions on Sundays for now. Instead of the webinars, I prefer right now for a while to answer the questions that are coming from you. And depending on how many and what types of questions I'm receiving, then I may go into the webinars again. But I think that is much more valuable for you right now that I answer your questions as they come, as you come across different challenges. It's so important for you to have someone to answer your questions as you come across them. Now, bear in mind that answering your questions is a fantastic way for you to not be locked in a different problem, right? So I don't want you to be stuck. I want you to be able to continue your learning, but do know that just the theoretical answer doesn't do for conversation. And most people consider or learn French just as like anything else, as business or any other subjects from school, and that is the exact reason why most of you are getting stuck, because it is this learning a language, learning French is an experience, has to be an experience. A language is much more than just knowledge, and conversation creates that experience, and which not only helps you to remember these rules, so many rules, you really need to know what to do with them and how to remember them. And most of you are asking me, how do I remember this? How do I remember that? It's so hard to remember something and then to remember like theoretically and then to apply it in conversation, in an experience. Just think about, I don't know, riding the bicycle. Did you ever have a manual to ride the bicycle? Not so much. Even driving, maybe you did have a manual, but the actual practical exam is a practical exam, is an experience. And that's pretty much the difference between someone who knows the language or learns the language and someone who applies it, who makes conversation, and in the meantime incorporates and enriches their vocabulary and their grammar. So just know that all these answers, I mean, I'm hoping that the answers that I'm answering, the questions that I'm answering are going to allow you to get the courage to actually start doing conversations, start the actual experience of the language, so that you don't feel disappointed with yourself because you are learning French, some of you for many years, and you're still not able to make conversation, to make it the experience. This is pretty much the difference between you before coming to me and you after working with me. So I have received today, and I'm going to answer everything that comes into the comments in this video. But I already have questions that came to me today, and Ove actually asked me quite a few questions for the beginners, and I loved the questions very much because every person wants to know, everybody wants to know this, and it actually gives, I want to give you the feeling, the sensation of the possibility of what is possible for you that an error or a lack of a skill doesn't necessarily mean that you are not able to eventually make conversation. You're talking to, I mean, you're listening to someone who speaks in a second language. So it takes quite an effort and motivation. And I have done it the hard way because I didn't have someone to help me, motivate me, and give me the courage to know that there are different ways, and I don't have to hit my head against the wall, because sometimes it feels like that. So I know exactly where you are. Believe me, I've been there. So the first question from Ove is, as a beginner, what are the modalities possible for an easier learning of the French language? So how do we learn easier the French language? Well, there has to be a mindset shift in order to learn French easier. That means that something is difficult for you. So the first thing that would be difficult for you would be the fact that you may take French as you may perceive French the same way that you perceive English, meaning English has each word has a pronunciation on its own. So if you don't hear a word pronounced before, you don't know how to pronounce it. So someone has to say it, you have to hear it before it's pronounced. And so this is a mindset shift that you need to have. And it's important because it makes it so much simpler when you know that in French is not like that. So in French we have rules of pronunciation which you need to know and practice. So once you know the rules of pronunciation, then looking for the rules of pronunciation, the way they are applied in words, and of course the exceptions, but the rules are important because that kind of holds you for 85% of the language. Yes, what is irregular, the irregular pronunciation, are commonly used words. So of course you're going to say maybe more of the irregular words on a daily basis, but also those irregular words, being the most commonly used words, are the ones that you're learning in the beginning in any program anyway. So, but the rest of the words, it's so much easier when you know the pronunciation rules and when you apply the rules, or rather than learning one word at a time. And so this is what most people do. They learn the French words one word at a time. And the problem with that is that in the beginning, we don't hear our pronunciation mistakes. I know that I didn't do it, and it took me 2 years, 2 hours a day for 2 years. I ran a CD with English, standard English without an accent, so that I can eventually hear my own mistakes. And now I hear when I make a mistake in pronunciation, so I can correct myself. So I'm still making, because I'm noticing it, but that's important. That is what takes the longest, of course, on your own. With a coach, so with me when you work, especially in the intensive program, I have the pronunciation course that I do with everybody. And once you've done that, then it's so much easier to hear your mistakes. And of course, with my help, I always make you aware of your mistakes. But see, that's what is the hardest thing. At the beginning, we don't hear our mistakes. So it is important to know the rules of pronunciation so that you don't learn one word at a time. And the reason, well, I said that you don't hear your pronunciation mistakes, and at the beginning you may hear the word, so you can ask, okay, so how do you pronounce this word, and you pronounce it after you imitate very few people get that right when you start learning the words, and so there is this problem that many of you may be already in the high beginner or even intermediate level of the knowledge of the French language. For instance, an Alliance Française test would probably assess you as an intermediate French speaker, I don't know. Your knowledge of French at intermediate level, but that does not mean that you're actually at the intermediate level in conversation. It's a big difference between knowledge and conversation. I have 10 students who are teachers at high schools, French teachers of the French language in high schools in North America, and they are working with me for conversation. So make no mistake, knowledge of the language and level of conversation, so the way you apply it, they're completely different things. So that would be one thing that would make you learn French easier, knowing that the pronunciation rules apply to the French words, as opposed to in English, is just you hear one word and you just imitate it. Another thing that would make you learn French easier would be to start conversation from the beginning. So, like I said, knowledge of the language and conversation, those are two completely different things. The knowledge, just if you want to know more, like brain, how the brain works, is taken care of by the left brain, left hemisphere, and the performance of the language is taken care by the right hemisphere. They are completely different. The performance is in the body. The learning is in the mind, is logical. And so you need to make conversation from the very beginning as you start learning the language. And if you didn't do it as you started, just start now, because learning French as you make conversation will make the learning much easier. You're gonna feel that it is it's applied, how it's applied, why am I doing this in the first place, and you're gonna have the surprise that you're gonna remember rules and grammar much easier as you make a conversation and applying them right away. So it's so important that you do that. So I would say that those two things will make you learn French much, much easier than otherwise you would. Another question from Ove. What are the materials that would help the level as a beginner? Well, first of all, you need the 2 books or 3. One would be the dictionary, a verb conjugation book, and a grammar book, so if you learn on your own. Remember that pronunciation cannot be learned on your own. Well, it can be learned on your own, but it's going to take a lot of time, and most people give up and they just manage, and that's when bad habits are built, which are so much harder to unlearn than if you learn properly from the very beginning. So you need these 3 books, and what I do, I always give, so in my intensive program, I have all the formats of the learning. So there is a PDF, it's a book, there is a audio book, so the audio of that book as well as the videos, because unless you do know everybody, your style of learning, everybody has a different style of learning, and some parts of the language may be easier for you to learn with a book, with print, others with just audio, and other parts with video. It's so important. The brain is just... Also, it could be, sometimes it may be easier for you to learn just with a book, sometimes with audio, sometimes with video. So I create my program with all three formats because you really never know when you'll need one of the materials. So the three books that I said before, as well as an audiobook with a method that gets you from 0 to advanced. The problems that I see out there, so my intensive program takes you from 0 to high intermediate to advanced level of conversation. Remember, level of conversation is higher than the level of knowledge of the language. What I see out there are audiobooks with games, and as much as it's fun, because I'm learning my own languages. I learn Italian, Spanish, and German, and I learned English, and so I know exactly what the phases are, and it is so much that you can do on your own. And I always encourage my clients to work on their own with whatever materials work for them. Duolingo is a very fun way to keep French every single day. I learn Italian with, all three languages with Duolingo right now, but I also have people that I make conversation with. So, anything that you want to try, although I really don't want you to spend a lot of money, it's not necessary. I have everything. You don't need to buy anything, really. So when you register to my program, you would get every material that you need. Not the dictionary and the verb conjugate or grammar. You get grammar from me, you get verb conjugation from me, and you get vocabulary from me. So whatever it is that you need additionally, either you get the books or you just use websites. So when you register with me, you don't need to buy anything else on the site. But if you learn on your own, you need those 3 books plus an audiobook that is comprehensive. The programs that I see out there are they're not substantial, meaning you don't need to have a lot of information. So I'm not talking about volume of information, because French language is French language. It starts somewhere and it ends somewhere. So it's not like, different styles of something, right? It's just that's the language. So, but what I mean to say is that it gives you the impression that you're going to speak well French, but what actually all those programs give you, they do help you to manage the French. And if that's what you're looking for, that's fine. So if you're looking to have just to get by and wing it, that's a very valuable point of view, and that's a very valid priority. Everybody has their own priority. I do know, though, that my audience, you included probably, have passion for French, and they really want to express themselves in French, and they want to understand the culture. You want to understand the culture and the language. And so that is not really given through a program that just helps you get by. But then again, every point of view is valid, and I'm not saying that if you want to get by, that's the wrong thing to do. Absolutely not. What I'm saying is that most of my audience are really passionate about the language and the culture, and they really want to get it right. They want to speak like the natives eventually. So that's what I would say for materials. Generally, do you suggest, he wrote in French, generally, do you suggest anything that you should know as a beginner for the language? Anything, specific things that you must know as a beginner? Yes, pronunciation rules, that's a must, an absolute must. And then, yes, I have a program, it's an 8-week 8-week program that actually helps you just like that get by. If you have a trip to Paris in 2 months, that's going to help you with it. And what I give in that program is the pronunciation course, of course, verb conjugation. So that is a must. What I consider a must as tenses would be the present tense, futur proche, be careful, not futur simple. The first future that you should learn as an anglophone is futur proche, passé composé, imparfait, futur simple, plus que parfait, and conditionnel. That would be must. I'm not including subjunctive here because we're talking about a beginner. What I actually listed, all the tenses that I listed, this is actually for someone who would get to a high intermediate level. Subjunctive is for an advanced speaker, and subjunctive can be intelligently avoided. So I'm not saying that you should. Again, I know that my audience really wants to learn properly and in depth the language and the culture, but the question is for beginners, and so prioritize it. Prioritize what you're learning, and those are in order. And you can replay this video to see what are the tenses and in the order that I mentioned. And this is the order that you should get your verbs in, and you should learn them. So specific things. You should know about the culture, because when you go to Paris, you make conversation with people. That's what you want to do eventually. And you'll need to speak about some things. And culture is so important. Culture, politics, and soccer. So it's really important that you are informed about that. So I give that. I give about the rules of the etiquette. In many parts of life, you need to know how to present yourself if you go to a dinner or even dating. So, what is the etiquette in different situations in life if you are to go to Paris or in France. So, what else is there? The reason I'm thinking about that program is From Newbie to Oh La La. That's the name of the program. And it's just an 8-week program, and it's really, really useful for someone who wants to go to Paris and manage the language and have a good start for that. What else am I giving there? I am giving 8 techniques of learning, because the questions here too are about how to learn, how to do, how to go about learning French easier. So in that program, I'm also giving 8 techniques that are really important. I'm going to mention sense memory, committed impulse, deep practice. Those are techniques that are trademark my method, and they give you a headway to learning French much easier, and to not forget, because it's very practical, it's experiential, it creates an experience for you, and that's how the brain works the fastest and easiest. If a beginner didn't have the opportunity to go to the Francophones to improve the communication, the oral communication, what can they do at home to manage? Well, in our group here, we know there are 4 steps that we do here. So the first step is do French every single day, even for 2 minutes. This is the reason I'm posting those little challenges every day. The second one would be to find a partner for conversation in the group, and of course be very careful not to do that for too long, because you build or not enhance, deepen bad habits, and that is reinforce bad habits, which are much harder to unlearn than to learn the right way from the beginning. But finding a partner for conversation and actually getting you have to get over the panic of starting a conversation, and that's so important to actually be comfortable with just making conversation. And if you do that for about a month with a partner here in the group, that's perfectly fine. And then you have to do classes to start with me. So that was what was it? The second. The third would be to contact me, because I do give one rendezvous for free to everybody, so that I can give you personal assessment, telling you exactly what to do and exactly what are your challenges and how to get over the challenges of the moment, which typically are, your challenges. Everybody has a kind of like a fingerprint, like the fingerprint. That's how we also learn, is the natural tendency of our brain to assimilate information. And so each of us have like different types of errors that we make. We all of us do that. So what I do, I tell you what types of errors you should be aware that you make, so that you don't beat yourself up for them, but you know that that's what your brain tends to do, and prevent that from happening. As in, being aware, you just interrupt yourself as you see that you're going on the path of that error that you typically make, and make a choice to just not make it. Make a choice to not make the error, to make the mistake. So yeah, these are all things. And of course, the last step would be to register for my programs. As for instance, now I have a special that ends tonight, J'Ouellette Éclair, which is a virtual immersion, and you get 3 full days with me for addressing exactly what I just talked about before, your personal challenges, and get beyond this point where you keep making those mistakes. And these 3 days can be done either, some people do have the time and can invest this time like that, 3 days in a row, or we can split that in 6 half days, and that is available only until tonight. I hope that you can register, because that will actually get you going on learning forward what you have started with. If you do want to, though, to start with me and get to the point of making conversation at high, intermediate to advanced level of conversation, then you should register for the intensive. Just contact me, and you can send a message to me. Also, you can write a comment in this under this video and let me know if you're interested to talk about either of these programs. I'm available for you today. So those are the questions that have been for the beginners. I have another question here about, about the pronouns. Dea, I'm having difficulties distinguishing the utilization of third-person pronouns. Leur, eux, les, lui, le. Okay. When do we use each of them? All right. So, yeah, it's mixed up. So, if you know, Dea, if you know what a direct object and the indirect object is, I would like to know. So I may probably, let me just see here, leur. Okay, so leur and lui sont en leur. Okay, so leur is a possessive adjective at the third person plural and she wrote it without an S. So that means that they have one something, one object. For instance, leur maison. So is an adjective because it qualifies the house and it agrees with the house. So it's their. So we're talking about third person plural, who are the owners. They are, and they own one house. C'est leur maison. Eux, chez eux. So I'm gonna give an example with eux. Ils habitent chez eux, chez eux, chez eux, chez eux. I'm making the liaison. So they live at their own house, chez eux, right? Or ils vont chez eux. They go to their home, to their own home. Ils vont chez eux, to their home. Another way of using eux is, for instance, to emphasize the subject. Eux, ils mangent très vite. They eat very fast. Eux, ils mangent très vite. I do not like to make a lot of grammatical theory. You may notice that about my method. I don't want to. I could go as deep as you want to. I actually teach linguists, PhD linguists, so I can go as deep in the grammar as you want me to. I just know from my experience and from all the other clients that I have had and I have now that a lot of grammatical lingo and analysis makes us think a lot and makes us speak very little because we're getting engrossed in the intricacies of the grammar. So just giving examples here. What I love to do is I love to teach based on patterns. So because the brain works on patterns, that's how the brain works. That's how the brain memorizes everything. It's like a computer, right? Finds that pattern and applies it everywhere else. So for instance, if you have exposure to Spanish, your brain is going to always apply the Spanish that it knows into French. And it's great. A lot of people kick themselves for it, and because they think, oh my God, I'm learning French and I'm speaking Spanish, that's a bad thing. And in fact, it's a really, really good thing, because all you have to do is to see where Spanish applies and helps you, and so it's similar to French, and where Spanish is different than French, and actually you should be attentive to not apply any patterns or any things that you know from Spanish. So this is the reason I'm giving you examples this way, so that eventually you catch the pattern. But for that reason, in order to do that, you need to be aware that you should focus on the pattern, not on each and every example, but noticing the examples that I'm giving, what is the pattern, and then eventually you're gonna get, oh wait, that should be this way. I don't know why, but it just sounds right. And this is where you want to be, because that's how conversation goes, okay? You don't want to become a linguist to write dissertations or to teach or to, get your PhD or translation. Yeah, even translation, I don't know how much that applies. You don't want to be a theoretician of the French language. You want to make conversation if you follow me, because I'm the conversation queen pretty much. That's what I'm very passionate about. Most people are traumatized by either by conversation or by the fact that they cannot make conversation, and this is why I'm here to do, to help you get beyond this point. So okay, and lui. Lui is an object indirect, so I would say I'm gonna give you this, and if that doesn't work too well for you, that's fine. Just leave a comment under this video and I'm going to explain a different way. But I'm going to show you, for instance, je parle à maman. I talk to mom. Je lui parle. So this is a pronoun that replaces an object indirect. So it becomes object indirect by default, but it's a pronoun. So it replaces a noun. Je demande à mon père de me donner sa voiture. I asked my dad to give me his car. Je lui demande de me donner sa voiture. And then you put le and les. Le and les are pronouns, and they also replace object direct, the object direct. So, je mange le gâteau. I eat the cake. Je le mange. Je vois le film, je le vois. I see the movie, I see it. And the les, same thing but in the plural, and le of course is masculine, but les, because in the plural it replaces both feminine and masculine. So I'm going to say, je mange les pommes, je les mange. I eat the apples, I eat them. Or je mange, j'aime les livres, je les aime. I like the books, I like them. So this is what I have for you, Dea. If you have any other questions, and I'm going to answer all the questions that are under the video, but remember that J'Ouellette Éclair, which is a 3-day immersion, actually 3-day, the reason why is this on special is because I added an additional day of immersion. So the regular program has 2 days, and I have added a 3rd day. So you literally are paying 2/3 because it's a special. That's a special offer. And don't be inhibited by the fact that it's called immersion. It's called immersion, and you don't have to have. It's for all levels. You don't have to have a particular level to qualify for this. This is the reason I'm not even asking for different levels. All my programs are for all levels, and it's the biggest advantage of this program is the fact that you will be immersed in as much French as we can do, and also all programs are designed already, and yes, I customize them for you, but they are still going from A to B because they're already done. But this program, J'Ouellette Éclair, I'm gonna write the link in the comments. What is the beauty about this is that I'm actually creating materials, what I was just talking about. I'm creating materials, videos, audios, PDFs for you specifically based on your challenges, your background with the language, your current level, and your goal. So nobody ever had these materials that I'm going to create for you, and nobody probably will in the future. And the way it works is we meet, we talk, and I see what your levels are and what exactly you want to do. We make a decision what we are going to focus on to accomplish in this time, and then I take some time to create these materials for you, and then we meet and we work together. And also the time with me, every time that you register to any of my programs, it never expires. So you don't have to think about it, oh my god, I can't register now because I can't commit to it. It is simply you register to take the special, and then you start or do it whenever you want, and you can spread the time and in however long time you want. You're the boss. You dictate the pace. I do make sure that we are going to reach those goals that you set for yourself and for us together. We are going to be a team. So these are the answers for this Sunday, and I'm looking forward to having more questions from you. And thank you so much for being here and for all the likes. I really love it. as well as I wanted to remind you to stay on your game and don't ever give up on your dream to become bilingual. Learn to speak Parisian French and break your language barrier. Merci beaucoup et à demain. Au revoir.